Hey, what's up, y'all?
Hello.
How we doing?
Okay.
Oh man. Welcome to the dope. Tonight we are going to talk about closing my office door. And now that that's done, we're going to talk about our ongoing bracket. Specifically, though, we're going to talk about two fandoms that I love very, very much. We're going to talk about Middle Earth, and we're going to talk about Star Wars because there's been a heated match between the two of them on our Facebook page. There's still time to respond to it and vote on it, so be sure to check that out. It's been a pretty wild day for voting. It's been by far our most intense day of voting since we started the franchise wars, which has been pretty exciting. So far, we'll hold off on Middle Earth and Star Wars for a little bit. We have one more person that's going to be coming in a little bit later, and we'll wait for them to come in before we start that conversation. But let me go here and we'll look at the matchups today. So we have so X-Men and 007 tighter than I thought, and X-Men is winning, and I thought 007 would have that one.
Yeah, so did I actually.
Yeah. But X-Men is winning 57 to 43%. That one doesn't have too many votes on it. That has about 40, so there's still plenty of time for people to vote on that one. Next up, this one is shocking with almost 60 votes. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter is losing 42 to 58 against the Spider-Man franchise, which is fascinating.
Wow.
I think that has a lot to do with JK and her turfiness.
Yeah,
TBH.
I was very unsure what I was going to vote on that, and I kind of switched back and forth a few times.
Yeah. And then the most shocking one of the day, which I want to break down a little bit. Star Trek versus the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Star Trek is winning 78% to 22%. This has 464 votes going right now. This became the most voted battle of the entire bracket thus far. And I think it brings up an interesting point, because when we're talking about fandoms, like, sure, everybody loves the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but are they as passionate as Star Trek fans? I don't think so, based on what I'm seeing here. Yeah, I find it very interesting. So what happened is I try and post each of these matches in one fandom group each, so that people can like vote on their favorites. And while the Marvel Cinematic Universe fans just saw it, and some of them voted on it, I would assume, a Star Trek fan, a very passionate Star Trek fan, posted this in multiple groups with the hashtag Make It So, and has crushed the MCU. It's kind of cool. Which is against the rules. It's just like, hey, vote for what you love. And there are more people that are being passionate on this particular poll about Star Trek. This has nothing to do with whether or not I think that the MCU is better than Star Trek or not. I prefer the MCU to Star Trek, even though I'm a huge Star Trek fan. But that has nothing to do with it. It's really just having a bit of fun. So I find that one very interesting. I would love to get your thoughts on this. Let's start with Stephanie.
Oh, me. Well, I think it's hilarious, and I love this. Even though I voted Marvel, I love this for the Star Trek fans. My mom's a huge Trekkie. Hi, Mom, if you're watching. She probably is.
She probably is.
So, and she is just like ecstatic that there she is.
There she is.
She is. Star Trek is like whooping Marvel's ass. And you know, she's been a Trekkie for longer than the Marvel movies have been out.
Oh, that's not going to work. Sorry, I was testing something. Didn't work.
So this probably feels like real justice for her.
Yeah. No, I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, by pretty much every metric except for, I think there's an argument for like score. But by most metrics, I think in terms of consistency, box office, multiple franchises dovetailing into each other to create this like cohesive, shared film universe. There's nothing else like it. But I think it's very interesting that the Star Trek fans, which is a very, very passionate, like if you're a Trekkie, like you are a Trekkie, so I find that fascinating. Eric, what do you think about this?
I feel like this is kind of stacking the deck a bit if they went around and like were soliciting votes from fellow Trekkies.
That's not against the rules, right? Like any Marvel fan could do the same, right?
That's true. Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, as I said on my post on the page, I'm not really a Trekkie myself, so I'm very biased, and I definitely prefer the Marvel films. But Star Trek, just as a whole, as a franchise, definitely has like an impact on popular culture and has a lot of staying power. So I can definitely understand the passion for it and why they would feel that this needs to why it needs to, as the comment is saying, whoop Marvel's ass.
As it should be. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. But the interesting thing is that this clears a path to an OG Star Wars Star Trek finals. If that continues that way. And if there's one fan base that is more passionate than Trekkies, it's Star Wars fans. So like I'm excited to see right, hopefully it stays civil. I think everyone's done a great job, by the way, of like expressing their love for their fans without shitting on someone else in the comments of all of the things. So that makes me very happy. But there's some bad blood. That's like Blood versus Crips, like OG like rivalry there. So we gotta be careful with that. Abby, what do you think about that? About Star Trek versus MCU, this like major upset that's happening right now?
So I shared, I want to say it was the Star Wars versus Middle Earth poll in a Women Who Love Sci-Fi group that I'm in on Facebook. And there were comments on that where people were like, I'm so upset that Star Trek is against Marvel. That's not fair. I can't pick. And it was so funny because the only Star Trek work that I've got any familiarity with is the J.J. Abrams trilogy. I want to watch the show eventually, but there's just so much of it, and I'm like intimidated, and I keep saying I'm going to get to it and haven't yet.
I highly recommend TNG, Next Generation. Voyager is also fantastic. I was never a huge fan of DS9, but my favorite singular episode of Star Trek is from DS9. Yeah, and I have not started on Discovery yet, but I hear amazing things about Discovery.
It's so good.
Yeah. And I watched Picard, and it started off good, but I thought that the end of the first season was a little uneven. So there's a lot of really good ones. I would personally suggest starting with The Next Generation.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I want to get into it eventually. But for now, like I'm also very biased and have to say Marvel is the one that I hope wins, just because that's what I like out of the two right now. That could change in the next couple of years. Who knows? But
who knows?
It's really interesting. I think it really the Star Trek Facebook groups really that was like a game changer. I try and post it in one. Hello, Deacon. I try and post in at least one fan group for each poll. Yeah.
And the Star Trek one just took off, and the MCU one did not. Caleb says, "Excuse me, Trekkies. That's an offensive word. Preferred nomenclature is Trekker. You bullies." Well, A, not a bully. B, when I was younger and more into Star Trek, that was the word for the fandom. I know
my mom said Trekker too. I didn't know.
It at some point it started becoming Trekker. But like when I was a kid, we call ourselves Trekkies, and that's the term I use. And if you had a problem with it,
Back in
that's all
my
right.
day.
Yeah. Hey, I'm old. I'm turning 40 Saturday, and actually, well, he ran away just so I was going to say let's shout out Eric because his birthday was yesterday.
Oh yeah, happy late birthday,
he
Eric.
Gone.
He's not there.
Wherever you are.
There he is.
I'm here.
Happy
Sorry,
late birthday.
cat-related emergency. She's
No, you're good.
destroyed that.
Just wanted to say happy birthday, by the way. It is Eric. Eric. Yesterday was Eric's 40th birthday. Eric, happy birthday! You beat me to 40. I've been saying for years I would eventually overtake you. It has not happened yet. But hashtag Maui's first to 50. You know, let's get that trending on Twitter. I will get there before you. Yeah, totally. No, I know, Caleb. I know you're joking, buddy. But yeah. But happy birthday, kind sir. What did you have a good birthday?
I did, yeah. I was really kind of dreading this birthday because it's a big one, and I don't do well with those usually. But I took a day off work, hung out with my sister and her wife, and we went to an Italian restaurant. This was the first time I've been to a restaurant in like a year.
Nice.
And we just kind of hung out and watched movies.
Outdoors at the Italian restaurant?
Outdoors, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you make a scene at the Italian restaurant? Were there scenes at the Italian restaurant?
No, it was not a Billy Joel song.
Thank you for getting my reference. I assumed the youngsters would not get it, but I'm happy that you
did. But yeah, we were outdoors though. Yeah, I'm not vaccinated yet, so I didn't quite feel comfortable going inside. But it was a big step. Like I haven't been out to eat anywhere in so long. But yeah, and then the rest of the day we just kind of hung out and watched some of my favorite movies. So, yeah.
What'd you watch?
Fellowship of the Ring, of course, my number one favorite. The Prince of Egypt, because we were just talking about it on Easter. We were like, this is the superior version. This is much better than the Ten Commandments.
We watched that in your living room years and years and years ago. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yep. And me being the youth group kid that I was at the time, I remember you were asking me questions about the differences between the movie and the source material. Yeah.
Anyway, then we also watched Labyrinth, which is
nice.
One of my favorites and one of my sister's favorites. So I figured we both could agree on that one because I had a bag of some of my favorite movies. I'm like, here, what do you guys want to watch?
Yeah. That's awesome. So let's while we wait for Gavin to turn up, let's talk about a more broad conversation about our favorite franchises. And you can mention Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, whatever, but what do you look for in a franchise? What are the kind of the hallmarks of what makes a fandom your favorite? Yes, Caleb, I agree. The songs in Prince of Egypt do slap.
Yeah, they do. It's an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah.
Can I start?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. So Middle Earth, definitely my favorite. I would wear this shirt for the occasion. For me, what makes that number one is just the level of world building, and I'm talking books as well as movies, just the immersion that's possible with how developed this secondary world of Middle Earth is, with just history and languages and peoples and cultures and creatures and just the sheer amount of detail. It's so easy for me to just get lost in it all. I find it just endlessly fascinating and extremely impressive because it all came from one man's imagination. So that's very inspiring to me as a writer and a creative person myself. And just the themes, I think also just the good versus evil and I relate very much to the Bilbo Baggins character of a very sort of unassuming, quiet person who's thrust into an adventure that's much bigger than him. There's a lot that I relate to within the series. So this is all of that kind of builds together to make it my number one.
Absolutely. Let's bring in.
Oh, hello.
Yeah. Hey,
Howdy,
Gav.
howdy.
Hi, Gavin.
Hey. What are you two always doing in the same bubble? You guys live together or something?
No, that would be gay.
She stalks me.
I get it. I'm just having I'm having a Harold moment. If you guys get that reference, niche reference. Right?
Good reference. Good reference. So you have the best references. So Gavin, we're talking about like kind of what attracts us to our fandoms right now. So Eric was just mentioning how world building is a big one. That's a big one for me too.
Ladies with
expanded
swords,
material.
Mostly.
Yeah. The expanded material, like outside of the movies, Lord of the Rings obviously has that because of the source material. Star Wars has that, but it came on the other side, right? Instead of it being the stuff that inspired the movies inspired this huge expanded universe, which is fantastic. And you can, like, if you watch the movies, like they're perfectly watchable on their own, but if you go into the books, every character you see in the background has a name and a story, and you can just fall down a huge rabbit hole, which I friggin' love.
Right.
So Abs, what about you?
Oof. I think characters really are like the main thing that really pull me in and like tie me to a particular fandom or franchise. Like there are some things that they're all right, but the characters don't really like speak to me, and so like I'll watch it, but I'm not gonna be like rambling about how much I love it, But then there's something like Star Wars. I remember when and this might be a controversial opinion to some people, but like I remember going crazy excited when they dropped the Force Awakens trailer, because it had been so long since there was a new Star Wars movie, and I literally just like the first time Rey was shown doing something that I want to say there was a scene where she was where they showed her with the lightsaber in the trailer. There was something she did that was like I just started crying the first time, and that was like they dropped the trailer like a year before the movie even came out. But just like being able to see this character, they finally put a lightsaber in like a woman's hand and made her a main character, and it just like, I say what you will about this sequel trilogy, but I love them just because of what they made me feel with that first movie, and like it's not in our franchise wars. Somehow Twilight beat it, but the Hunger Games, there are all these characters. They're not exactly relatable because they're in like such a extreme situation, but at the same time you watch these characters make these really tough decisions and grow so much over the course of 3 books or 4 movies, whichever your preferred method of enjoying the world is. And they just well-written characters, and characters that you don't necessarily have to relate to, but that really just speak to you in some way. Like maybe it's what you aspire to be like, or what you maybe you see your close friends in a character or something. Just well-written characters that really speak to you. That's what really draws me into a fandom.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry,
and I wish Hunger Games could have made it too. I very much like the Hunger Games movies. And want to talk about good music, like that has a fantastic soundtrack. I love that soundtrack for this.
I don't want to be dramatic and say that soundtrack changed my life, but that soundtrack changed my life. Especially songs from District 12 and beyond, like completely changed.
It's a fantastic soundtrack.
She will talk about the Hunger Games soundtrack for like hours. I'm not even exaggerating.
You want to talk about things that slap? That soundtrack slaps.
Absolutely. And the Catching Fire soundtrack is very different and doesn't fit the world as well as the first one did. But lyrically, just as good.
I do want to say that so this was based on like box office performance is how I determined like the top ones. There were a few things that were excluded. Like I didn't want the entire thing to be all like superhero franchises because they were split a few different ways. Like it literally could have been just like 12 different superhero franchises. So I tried to like narrow it down as much as possible. I took out some other ones because they'll be in different brackets later, like Pixar was in there as a franchise. And also since Pixar doesn't necessarily have like a shared universe, they kind of hint at it every once in a while, but I decided to exclude that because I didn't feel it's a studio, not as much of a franchise, right? But I did wish about that. Someone else asked me like, why wasn't The Matrix included? But like some of these franchises didn't make enough to get that high on the leaderboard. If I took some more time to do some advanced metrics, I could have like, figured out like the average, like this one only made this much, but per movie it made this. I could have done something like that, but that would have gotten way too, statistician.
No one's paying you to do this. No one's giving you money to do this.
I do obsess over these things, more than I care to admit. And then also come in with the rules, right? Like, Middle Earth. The Middle Earth franchise is a Peter Jackson led thing. So the decision to leave out the old school, animated studio, stuff, was a tough choice, but ultimately it felt so far removed from the Middle Earth franchise. I did not include it,
right.
So things like that.
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Caleb said, if you love falling down Star Wars rabbit holes, have you ever heard of the Star Wars Minute podcast? They watch the Star Wars movies 1 minute at a time and give facts and backstory to all the tiny detail stuff.
I was a
Star Wars Minute
casual listener. Yeah, I was a casual listener of that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and Thomas, who is a frequent contributor on The Dope, is a big fan of Star Wars Minute as well. I love that. I also love Star Wars Explained. It's a great YouTube channel. Alex Damon, the recently dethroned Star Wars movie trivia Schmodown champion, he was the champion for like almost 3 years. Runs that channel, and he knows everything like about Star Trek. So if you want to like go like deep on Star Trek, follow him. He does like lore updates where he'll like take you on like the complete history of like the sequel trilogy or the prequel trilogy, things like that, or what's canon right now in the expanded universe stuff. It's really, really cool.
Star Wars then. You were saying Star Trek, I think.
Start Wars, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I was confused.
I've got an almost 40-year-old brain now, Eric. I'm thinking with sand here. So Stephanie, what about you? What draws you to fandoms?
For me, it's very much the people in the fandom. I remember when I started watching Doctor Who, which is my biggest fandom, even though it's not a part of this war.
It's the next one, though.
Yes, I'm so excited. I was so drawn to the online community, the fan fiction writers, the Facebook page people, the Tumblr users, like every part of it. And I never really got into, honestly, any other like big franchise until mostly Abby. But other people pulled me into it. So now like I'm a Star Wars fan, and now I'm a Marvel fan, which my cousin originally like sat me down and made me watch all the movies in order. And then it becomes a shared personal experience between me and my girlfriend, me and my cousin, me and my friends. And that is really important to me. And there's also just something so beautiful about like the culture around these things. Like everyone was watching Mandalorian. Everyone was watching WandaVision. You could just scroll through your Facebook and see memes and people's like talking about it and all this stuff. And I love feeling a part of that and being able to contribute my own opinions and ideas and theories and all that. So that is the big draw for me.
So it's fandom as a social lubricant.
Yes.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
One way to put it, I guess.
Banning that from your vocabulary.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it was lubricant, but
what? Is it the way I said lubricant?
It's just our knowledge of you as a person.
In my baritone, should I just not say that? Was it too like drawn? Yes. Fandom is a social lubricant. As I clean my glasses.
Well, it wasn't before, but now.
Well, now it is. Gavin, what about you, my love? What draws you to your fandoms?
I really like what Steph was saying about this sort of like collective effervescence of fandom and sharing enthusiasm, and that's something that I think is the reason why people miss movie theaters in these quarantine times and miss conventions, because we get to experience something that we love together in a really powerful way that makes it even better than the piece of media itself, right? Mm-hmm. For me specifically, sort of related to that idea, but a little disconnected, was I know the reason I'm drawn to Star Wars so strongly is because it was such an integral part of my childhood. And I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to when it comes to some fandoms. But with regards to Star Wars specifically, I think it has to do with the fact that it taught me storytelling. It taught me how to tell stories, and it taught me the sort of fairy tales and mythos that surround us in real life, and appreciating how narratives come together, whether that's real life narratives in your own experience or outside of that. Episode 4 being such a quintessential hero's journey, a la Joseph Campbell, just breaking down, the 12 key steps in how a story comes together so that it has, catharsis and development. It's fantastic, and it's supplemented by these themes that are just so resonant, and that's really why I think Star Wars has had such great success, not just in our poll but in general, because some of their themes are about generations and redemption and doing better and the possibility that something can be better. So that just lends itself so well to fandom, right? A new generation can pick it up immediately because the story lets itself be picked up by a new generation. You can hate this prequel trilogy for the longest time, but Star Wars being about redemption, you want to see those movies redeemed eventually, right? And that's why the prequels have gotten a second wind. And I think that has to do with, the way that the themes of Star Wars and the storytelling devices of Star Wars have ingrained themselves in who we are as people. We like to see these narratives of, oh, now we love Hayden Christensen. He has been redeemed. The next generation can love this version of Star Wars. I still love that version of Star Wars. And I think that's great. And that's definitely why I've latched onto it. Star Wars has come and go in my life. It's been my second tier fandom, my third tier fandom, and now it's back to full force. And, with all this merchandise and books and whatnot. But it can come back in waves, and it might wash away again. I know I have a lot of friends who are like, after the sequel trilogy, I was done, and the Mandalorian brought me back or whatever. And that's great about it. You could just pick it up, put it down, but it'll still be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Thank you for that. That made my day. We summoned Thomas. Yeah, so let's dig a little bit into this Star Wars v Middle Earth that is happening right now. I really want to talk about that. So here we go. Star Wars versus the Lord of the Rings. There are some very passionate fans on both sides of this, and I'm finding it fascinating. Let's look at what the stats are currently on that. Let me find the current votes on it. 286 votes. Currently, Star Wars is putting a little bit of distance between itself and Middle Earth, 58% to 42% on Star Wars versus Middle Earth. Eric, since it was your birthday yesterday and you are the biggest Middle Earth fan I know, I would love to hear, and I also know that you're a big fan of the Star Wars franchise. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Middle Earth franchise versus the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah, this was really tough because these are probably my two of my absolute top fandoms. So like it was hard for me to come to a decision because I had to sort of look at things objectively. And as I was saying on the post that I left, I think what really pushed Middle Earth ahead for me is like the sort of singular vision of it having the one director on each of the films, whether they were good or bad films, you know, and people have mixed opinions about the Hobbit trilogy, but there was still this consistent world and this consistent vision throughout the entire series, which I don't feel like we have as much with Star Wars, because obviously the original trilogy stands up very well still today, and they're classics in my opinion. The prequel trilogy at the time was very hated. I think it was very much because George Lucas's vision for it was much more based on the technology and not as much on the storytelling to some extent. And so it sort of suffered from that. And now we're seeing a lot of mixed opinions about the sequel trilogy for various reasons, just fans having different expectations, the two directors having very different visions of where they wanted to go with the story. So like there isn't that same sense of consistency, even though the universe itself, as Gavin said, has this staying power within pop culture to, you know, to bring these other interpretations to it over the years. For me, at least, the film series doesn't hold together as well as a collective because of those reasons. Because if you have 3 prequel movies, which people have, you know, they're flawed and they have mixed opinions about, and then 3 sequel movies that are flawed and people have mixed opinions about, it's like 6 out of the 9 movies. Then that's the majority of them that are kind of problematic at that point, versus 3 problematic Hobbit movies. That was kind of what pushed it over the edge for me. But I mean, I will admit to a certain bias because, as we've said, Middle Earth is my #1 fandom. So,
So, did you mention Rogue One and Solo in that?
I didn't actually. I didn't take those into account. I was just looking at the Skywalker.
Do you think that would be enough to sway you, or no?
Me personally, no, because I'm actually not a fan of Rogue One, and I know that's a controversial opinion.
Oh, that's right. You did not like Rogue One. I forgot about that. I love Rogue One. That's fairly high on my list. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Okay. So, and also, I should also specify right now that I have not chosen between Middle Earth and. Oh, yes, Caleb said, and the Ewok Adventures. There's 2 of us.
That's true. Like, how far are we willing to go with looking at these expanded universes?
Yeah, but I have not cast my vote yet. So I am going to cast it at the end of this show. I will make a decision listening to what everybody thinks about it, because I am so torn on this one. You know, my heart says something and my head says something else, and so I'm very curious to hear people's opinions on
so
this.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. So Abby, what do you think?
Oh. So I've only seen the Middle Earth films. I haven't read the books yet, which, for someone who loves books, I know that's not allowed, but I really enjoy them, but it's not something that's connected with me as much. And I think if it was a weird time in my life when I watched them, so like I was a little distracted. I think if I went back and like watched it all again, I would connect with it more. But Star Wars has always been it's been a constant part of my life, pretty much. Like I think I said this in the last one we did, but like I was practically born to be a Star Wars fan. Both my parents loved it, so I was watching it. I was 5 when The Phantom Menace came out. And so, like, from the time I was, like, 4 years old, we were watching Star Wars movies. And I practically lived in my Padme dress for, like, 2 years. So, yeah, it's really interesting to see how close these two are, though, because they're two, like, really well established fandoms as far as like time goes, because like the movies haven't been out as long as the Star Wars movies necessarily, but the books spoke to so many people before the movies that people are gonna, when voting for this, they're still gonna, even though it's movie central. This is centered on the movie franchises. I think people who have the love for the books are still gonna, be like, well, this is, I love these books, so I gotta vote for this one still. And so it's interesting to see two very like well established and two fandoms that have really stood the test of time over years and decades, and watch them have to battle it out against each other. It's really going to be interesting to see either one of these go up against, as much as it hurts to say it because I love Marvel, that one's probably going to go to Star Trek at this point. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see either one of these go up against.
Unless some passionate Marvel fans get a hold of it.
True, I think, and there's still time.
There's still time, and like they probably would have the numbers at this point, like if they rallied. But it seems to me that the Trekker fan base is very much. I think they want to see it just take everything down.
Yeah.
Some people just want to watch the world burn, and
that one's like, that's one's been around for a long time too. And so yeah, it'll really be interesting to see any combination of the three in the end. Yeah. Like I'm really curious to see how this goes. Mm-hmm. And even if it doesn't go my way, I'm still gonna be excitedly watching and waiting to see exactly how this ends, because it's going to be crazy either way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, Gav, lay it on us. Give us some of that sweet reasoning that you
see.
have.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything cogent to say about it. I can say why I ended up choosing what I did. And there's biased reasons for it. I grew up with Star Wars, and I only recently fell in love with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I have always preferred sci-fi over fantasy. That's just who I am as a person. But the reasoning and the logic that I gave, if I had to justify my opinion for unbiased reasons, is actually the opposite of what Eric said, which is that, I think the thing that draws me to Star Wars as a franchise, not just as 9 films, but or rather 11 films, but as a franchise, is the fact that it can change over time, and that it's generational, and that there's this element of passing the torch on to other people. I just think that's so inviting and opens it up to a lot more possibilities and storytelling and adventure. And that's just what I'm about when it comes to franchise strength and longevity and stuff like that. That's what I dig. I chose what I did because I dig it.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. And someone had mentioned in the comments that there's so many more places where Star Wars can go where they're not sure what they're going to do next with Lord of the Rings. And we have the Amazon series coming up, which is going to be exploring the Second Age. But I think the interesting thing about that is there's really only so far that can go, because all of that's been pretty well plotted out. Whereas it feels for me that there's a sense of unknown with Star Wars that kind of gives it a lot more places where it can go going forward in the future. And since they also erased the pre-Disney expanded universe, there's a lot of places they can go also before the franchise. So that's very interesting. So then you're right, it becomes well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer, this singular vision, or, do you prefer, this big sandbox where everybody can play and create their own little corners? If we were including expanded universe stuff, Star Wars would probably get my vote. For me, I think it would be if I had my druthers in this bracket, it would come down to MCU and Star Wars. And that's what I thought was going to happen, which is really fun to see that challenged. So yeah. Caleb said, if the Ewok Adventures count, then the animated Middle Earth ones should too, but whatever. I guess my question would be, are the Ewok Adventures still considered canon?
Don't think so.
I don't
Because they
think
just got
they
just got added to Disney Plus's legacy
They-
section.
If they're in the
I
legacy
noticed
section, then
that
they're not
using
they're
that
not canon.
terminology of legacy Star Wars. Like they're like, this is not canon anymore, but we're gonna put this on here.
Or you know what? No, they call it Legends now. They call it Legends now, which is pretty funny.
But I don't know that it would matter either way because I just don't know that it adds anything to the franchise. To be honest,
We watched those religiously as a kid, though. My mom found them at I want to say it was the DVD was a Dollar Tree or something crazy like that. My little
This is a-
sister,
this is a good point
wake
here.
up every morning and she'd have it playing already. She watched it daily.
I love that.
They're not quality, but they still have a special place in my heart.
Can I
For sure.
I gotta
Can I
point out real quick, you compared Star Wars to Sandbox, and that's a bad idea because Anakin doesn't like sand.
In fact, he hates it.
Force and gets
Hates it.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Can I shoot myself in the foot a little bit on my comment?
Sure. Sure, but real quick, just let me real quick say I agree, Caleb. I think Tolkien versus Trek, that pure high fantasy versus pure sci-fi, that would be very interesting.
I think so. Shooting myself in the foot a little bit about letting different people take the reins on Star Wars, which I still think is a good thing. It's just interesting to me that I think of the original trilogy of Star Wars, there was different directors for each one, wasn't it?
Mhm.
And of course, we know the huge gap in ethos between J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson as far as how they took the sequel trilogy. And the prequel trilogy was the only one that was unified by a single director, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yep. Lucas directed all three of them. Mhm.
Yeah. And I think it certainly holds up as the most cogent trilogy in terms of the story arc and the narrative that it's trying to tell. But, I think a lot of people would argue is the weakest trilogy. Despite that,
Technically, I would say, despite all of the CG and everything, the acting, the implementation of that CG, all of that, I think, is probably the weakest of the three trilogies.
I just think it's interesting that it works to both, a detriment and to benefit. Because we saw that a lot of people's biggest gripe with episode 9, I feel, was that it just wasn't a continuation of 7 and 8. Or for me, I just rewatched the original trilogy and I was stunned by how tonally different episode 5 and episode 6 were from each other. 5 feels like a spiritual successor to 4, but 5 and 6, the way that Han goes from really getting the shaft in episode 5 and being this very Casablanca romantic tragic character into being comic relief in episode 6 it's just wild. So it's interesting how one director taking the reins on something can be both to a benefit and to a detriment, and vice versa. How different people taking the reins can be great. I loved the directional shift between episode 4 and 5. I love the directional shift between episode 7 and 8. But it's all good.
And I think Marvel's cracked the code on that.
Yeah,
Marvel has a singular figure that is steering the story ship. And then he finds amazing artists to actually do the work and trust them with it just enough, gives them just enough freedom to create their own riff on it. It's jazz.
Yeah.
Right? It is organized chaos, and you get all these really cool little flavors and things, and that's how you end up getting all these franchises that work well together, but then also work well on their own. And there's not really that many duds in there, right? And even the ones that have been considered the worst. Like the Thor series, right? They get Taika Waititi and then re-energizes it. Okay, we'll just we'll make some tweaks here. Everything still counts as came before, but we'll make some tweaks and boom, it'll be fine. And that's why I'm shocked. Oh, I'm not shocked. I know exactly what happened, but disappointed that I won't see that get deeper into the bracket, because it can't be understated how like revolutionary what they have done is. And we're seeing what they did now being applied to the Star Wars universe in a really cool way. Like we're seeing that being applied to our Trek universe in a really cool way. Like we're seeing like the blueprint that Feige did being applied to different things. It's changed the game on how these like movie franchises work, which is super cool. So, Stephanie, what do you got? What do you got on this babble?
I don't have a lot to say because, to be completely honest, I voted Star Wars because this one literally has enough passion for it for the both of us. A large percentage of our conversations are Star Wars based.
I wouldn't say large percentage. Maybe 20-30%.
A high percent. And like I said before, I'm all about sharing my fandoms with the people I love. So even just saying I'm going to vote Star Wars because that's Abby's favorite is enough for me. And I also just really enjoy the movies. I finally got to see my first Star Wars movie in theaters, with this literally the last one that came out. And it was just a great experience to share that with a crowd and to share that with my friends and get to experience that kind of emotion on the big screen. I loved that. So
yeah,
my reason.
Caleb, I think that's fair. Lucas and Filoni have been doing the interconnected universe before Marvel. I think that is I think that's a fair assessment. I think Marvel did it though in a more like in a bigger way, right? That's interconnected universe between like film and television. And I think, like I said, if you include the expanded universe stuff in Star Wars, I think it's a completely different story for me. The prequel trilogy, I am not a big fan of the prequel trilogy if we're talking about just the films, but when you include all the expanded universe stuff, that's what really elevated that for me. Like the stuff that Filoni does, like I want Filoni to be, and it feels like that might be starting to happen, but like Filoni and Favreau, I would like to see the two of them be the Kevin Feige of the Star Wars universe. Like Kathleen Kennedy can still be in charge of everybody, but like in terms of like the story direction of the universe, put it in their hands and I would be very happy. And we're seeing they're getting kind of their own like Disney Plus like corner of the Star Wars universe. I would love to see them have more control over the film universe as well. I know they have their story group with Filoni and Pablo Hidalgo, and I think there might be a couple other people in that story group. But yeah, I don't know to what extent that story group has control over the film universe, over the story of the film universe. But I think that'd be interesting.
I'd trust Jon Favreau with anything, to be honest.
I love Favreau.
Steered me wrong yet.
Yeah,
I really think, like, even with like the Disney remakes, Jungle Book's the best one so far.
Jungle Book is fantastic. Yeah.
I really like Jungle Book, but for every Jungle Book there is a Lion King. Absolutely. Yeah, Clone Wars and Mandalorian, I think, really elevated and reinvigorated and reunited the fandom. I was sick of Star Wars during the sequel trilogy because it got so toxic and angry. And I feel like the Mandalorian came in and everyone was just like, Baby Yoda. Now is Grogu, and it like brought the universe back together, which makes me very happy. So
that is Rebels erasure, though. I want to say that is Rebels erasure.
I love Rebels. I love Rebels so much, and Bad Batch looks like it's going to be amazing. I have to say.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one.
So, man, okay. So I think I have my decision. And And I think I'm gonna have to go because really what this comes down to is not metrics. It's not this one has this many good movies. This one has this many good movies. What it ultimately does come down is like what makes me squeeze the most and feel like a kid again. And those other things can influence my decision and has influenced my decision in certain things. Like that's why I voted for Fast and the Furious in one of the earlier rounds. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Star Wars.
I thought you might. Yeah, I kind of
locking in my vote now.
As much.
Locking in my vote now. You know me very well, Eric. You know me a little too well.
Well, I mean, I was the one that introduced you to Lord of the Rings, if I recall correctly.
You did introduce me to Lord of the Rings.
Been into your life for longer, so that's understandable.
Yep, since I was a little kid, it's one of the first movies I ever saw. Actually, yeah. So I am locking it in. I am placing my vote right now for Star Wars. I'm gonna have.
He searched his feelings. He knew it to be true.
I knew it. Finally, I have voted. So that's 59% now to 41% on Middle Earth. So any Middle Earth fans out there, you still got time to get your franchise through. Same thing with James Bond and Wizarding World, which is very tight too, 58 to 42. So, yep.
Come on, Spidey.
I was just going to say, now that I know that it's legal to promote this in fan groups, I may have to read
Oh, he's coming to be good.
Lord of the Rings fans.
Absolutely. And if people ask me, this is what I say is included, but ultimately it's like you include whatever the heck you want to include. Like like I have no control over what people, ultimately want to base their decisions on. And it's just for fun. So it doesn't really matter. But when people ask, like, this is what I consider to be the parameters. So, but that's all just suggestions. Vote for what you love. Put it in any group that you want to put it in to see your thing, your fandom keep going, because that's what it's all about, right? Just have some fun with it. So this will be over then by Friday. Will be the final matchup. So tomorrow we'll see what's going head to head. As it stands now, it looks like tomorrow we're going to have X-Men versus Star Wars and Star Trek versus Spidey.
X-Men
which
is lucky
if
it
you
made
told
it this
me
far.
that was going to be the final four, I would have laughed. The fact that Harry Potter is getting taken out and MCU is getting taken out, there's a huge upsets. That's the number 1 seed and the number 4 seed getting taken out, which is amazing. And James Bond is the number 3 seed on that. So that's like 3 upsets. 3 upsets. Middle Earth is the 10th seed, and I thought that was going to be a strong contender to beat Star Wars, and it still can, right? Because if Eric shares it in some Middle Earth fan groups, we could see Star Wars get taken out, and it could come down to we could get that pure high fantasy versus pure sci-fi final that Caleb mentioned earlier. It could come down to Tolkien versus Trek, which would be a very, I think, interesting battle. So there you go. Yep. Caleb said that's why the animated Middle Earth movies bother me so much. The Hobbit was one of my first movies. It was a huge part of my childhood, and that's fine. That's totally fine, Caleb. Totally fine. That does not, like I said, you can vote however you want. Your heart can steer you wherever you want it to go. None of what I say ultimately matters. You just vote with what you love. If you want it in your head, say, well, I'm including this because blah, blah, blah. No one's going to come at you for it. It is what it is.
I do love the animated Hobbit.
I love the animated Hobbit. I do not like Bashki's Lord of the Rings.
No, I didn't.
And then the animated Return of the King it's good.
Uneven. Okay. Yeah, but it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I knew immediately I was gonna vote Star Wars, but there was a moment where I just thought back to reading about the weird friendship between C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and all of the drama around those books. And that I was like, maybe for the drama, I should give this one. But then I was like, no, your heart says Star Wars.
I would have loved if Narnia had made it into the bracket and we could have like Tolkien versus Lewis.
That would have been hilarious.
That would have been a lot of fun. So yeah, like I said, this should end by Friday. On Saturday, which is my birthday, I'm going to post a special one-off match in honor of Godzilla versus Kong. We're going to do a Godzilla versus Kong over the weekend. And then next week we'll start our best doctor bracket.
Yes.
So we're gonna do a best doctor bracket, and we're gonna debate the best doctors of the Doctor Who universe. We have 1 through 13. We have the War Doctor. We have Ruth Doctor from this most recent season. And we also have the alternate second Doctor played by Grand Moff Tarkin himself, Peter Cushing. So that is our 16 Doctor bracket, and I'm excited for that. I think there's some really interesting matchups. I can actually share the matchups real quick. We have a couple more minutes before we're going to log off here. So real quick, I'll pull up the best Doctor bracket, and I'll tell you what the first round matchups are for any Doctor Who fans out there. And we'll have a fun panel to talk about Doctor Who. I'm going to try and get a mixture of people that are fans of classic Who and people that are fans of new Who as well. So, I did not put, I'm not going to give them to you because it's not in here. It's in something else. I started copying it over, but I didn't finish. So it just says like Tom Baker versus Indiana Jones, which I think is hilarious.
Who would win, Tom Baker or
Who would win?
Jones?
So yeah, I have to find
actor,
the bracket document.
Not the fourth Doctor, the actor.
Yeah, I'd have to find the bracket document that I had for that one, which would take some digging. So I can't share it with you, but we will be sharing it early next week. And the bracket will start, I believe, on Tuesday, and we'll go from there. So there you go. Yep. So yeah, Tuesday will start, and then the next day we'll talk about the first round, and then our picks for the rest of the thing. That'll be fun. I love the Narnia movies, and speaking of which, I think I will be doing a reading of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think I just got asked while we've been recording to play Aslan in a reading of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which has me very, very excited. Awesome. Also want to make sure I shout out that my little sister just had her birthday on the 4th. So happy birthday to my sister, Evie, and happy birthday today to my sister, Tasha, as well as my youngest sister, Avery, who is a very, very tiny person. I'm 40 and she is, I think, 5 this year. So yeah, there we go. Talk about your age difference. That's my youngest sibling. So so happy birthday to all of them, and happy birthday to my grandmother, whose birthday is on the 13th. So we got tons of birthdays.
Lots of April birthdays for your family, huh?
Mm-hmm. Caleb, yes, I will make sure that I post the link so you can listen to that. I believe that will be next this next Monday. So yeah, I'm excited for that. I'm gonna, going to talk like this, and hello, Lucy. It'll be fun. It'll be a good time. So yeah, I want to thank you to this wonderful panel of wonderful people. We got to do a Transformers one soon, so Gavin can share the pinnacle of their collection. You're not gonna can you just tell people what the pinnacle of your collection is?
The pinnacle of my collection is a McDonald's Happy Meal toy that I acquired in 2009. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Come on.
Talking about Transformers in public is like putting a mark of shame on myself. I'm Hester Prynne in the field of sci-fi nerds right now.
No, it's not. Transformers is awesome. Own your
Rose
fandom.
Bush to my left and like Puritans to my right, and I'm just like, surrounded on all sides. And
Scarlet T instead of an A.
We do not judge fandoms. We do not judge fandoms here. You like Twilight, you like Twilight. That's fine. You like Transformers.
Good enough for me to like them all.
You say Bumblebee was a fine movie. I say poopy to you. Yeah, no.
Bumblebee
was
is
great.
a fine movie. First
Bumblebee
of all,
was
Bumblebee is
great,
like the
but-
only good one.
But if you were fatigued by 4 previous 3-hour-long movies, I don't blame you for skipping it. You know.
But just tell, because it's the coolest thing ever. I want to get it on camera. So
You know that they have like 3 more Transformers movies all in development simultaneously right now? It's bad.
I did not know that.
There
The
are
Bay Transformers are the good one.
Yeah, there are 2 good ones. It's Bumblebee and then the 1986 one.
Yes. Which we're going to do a reading of that too. We had to finish working on that script, but I want to do a reading of the.
What about my one-person show? My one-person show of the 1986 Transformers.
That was amazing. We were talking about this, and they started reciting all the lines from the movie in the voices. It was incredible.
I did my best. It
It was like the first 5 minutes. It was insane. I was like, how do you have this entire thing memorized?
I do very well during the Autobot City stretch of it all. But, I crumble in the middle. But
Do you please just tell them what the pinnacle of your collection is, please, so we can sign off?
Is it
do you-
Shia LaBeouf? Do you have Shia LaBeouf?
He's in your
Actual
basement right
goodness
now.
If anything, I would be in his basement, and I would be his next meal. Him being the actual cannibal. Shia LaBeouf. Oh, Caleb, that's awesome. And that makes you very unique in the best way. Very appreciative of you and your advocacy for Transformers fans everywhere.
Well, I will say I like the first Bay Transformers movie. That is a fun movie.
It's charming.
The second
It's
one
weird.
on are diminishing returns for me until Bumblebee, and Bumblebee was a delight. I loved Bumblebee.
Hot takes 3 and 4 are the only watchable ones after the first one in the Michael Bay ones.
Yeah, since you won't say what the pinnacle of your collection is, I guess I will say it instead. It is a Unicron, and it is gigantic,
I think
and
it's like-
I want it so bad.
30 inches tall, something like that. 32 inches tall.
It
I
is
don't know.
huge. It is so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So yeah, we'll when we do a Transformers bracket, probably would be about the actual Transformers themselves, not the movies. But
Not much to say about those. Yeah.
not much to say about those. There's not much competition, Bumblebee, but we will definitely have to do a Transformers characters matchup. It'll be a lot of fun. So. But that's our show. We will see you next week when we talk about Doctor Who, and I believe the week after Doctor Who will be Disney movies. I have a huge bracket already built, actually. Well, I have the bracket ready to be built, and I got to start plugging in the movies now. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this one. It's going to be a little bit tougher. I think I want to have all of the princess films represented, of which I believe there are 13 now. However, I'm trying to decide whether or not Brave will count, because technically Brave is Pixar. But
are you going by the Disney princess franchise, or the ones that actually just had princesses in them?
it's a tough question.
Yeah, there's a lot of gray area with this. I think.
But in order to make sure that the other, things outside of the Disney princess, I think literally like one side of the bracket will be the Disney princess films. And then the other side of the bracket will be the non-princess films. So that way we're not just having princess versus princess in the end. The princesses will duke it out for supremacy. And then the non-princess films will duke it out on the other side of the bracket. And then we'll have the number one non-princess film go up against the number one princess film, I think is how we're going to do it. Okay. So yeah, that should be an interesting one. I'm very excited about that one, being a big Disney fan. I got so excited. I just decided to go back starting from Snow White. And I'm just going to start watching all the Disney movies.
Wow. That's what I've been doing this year. Since I have access to all of them now through Disney Plus.
Snow White is fun, but Snow White's voice is annoying AF, I have to say.
Is it fun?
I'm not going to include any sequels, Caleb, just their OG movies for each one.
That's what I did.
Little Mermaid 2 was fun.
I love Little Mermaid 2.
Little Mermaid 2 is fun. Yeah. So that's gonna be that bracket. I think it's gonna be a fun bracket though. I think that's gonna be a really fun one. So yeah, if anyone has any ideas for brackets they would like to see us do, let us know in the chat or on the Facebook page. And
Maui's sexiest looks.
Yes.
We will get it on the bracket. So thank you everybody for listening to the show. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Keep it dope, everybody. Goodbye.